Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a totally radical blueprint for modern management. This is the stuff that completely transformed the tech world and really redefined what it actually means to build a high-performing team. So picture this. You're sitting in an executive meeting at Netflix. The product has been growing at an absolutely astonishing 30% a quarter for 3 quarters in a row. You do some quick math and realize that in just 9 months, your single company is going to require a third of the entire United States internet bandwidth. You look around the room and ask, does anyone actually know how to make sure we can manage that? And the honest answer from your team? I don't know. When you're scaling that insanely fast, the traditional rules and playbooks, they just go right out the window.
And that intense, super high-stakes environment, that's exactly what forged the insights in Patty McCord's book, Powerful. McCord served on the executive team at Netflix for 14 years, and her book acts as a direct guide to building the kind of nimble, high-performance culture you need to anticipate rapid change and survive extreme growth. It's essentially a playbook for treating your employees like capable adults. We're going to systematically unpack McCord's paradigm-shifting philosophy through 5 critical pillars: a radical new culture, context over control, the power of radical honesty, fact-based vigorous debate, and building the future team.
All right, let's jump right into pillar number 1, a radical new culture and shifting the paradigm. To survive today's fast-paced business landscape, we really have to fundamentally overturn conventional management wisdom. 20th century management was entirely built on elaborate, cumbersome systems designed to control people through policies and procedures. It basically assumes people need to be managed, right? But 21st century management, it's all about giving people agency. It's about stripping away that senseless bureaucracy and replacing it with a culture of freedom and responsibility. Now, you might be wondering, does doing away with bureaucracy just turn the workplace into a chaotic free-for-all? Not at all. As McCord stresses, ditching the words policy and procedure doesn't mean a lack of discipline. In fact, she loves discipline. The shift actually requires intense discipline around a core set of behaviors, and that is to start right at the top with the executive team. You aren't removing structure, you're replacing rigid policies with a disciplined adherence to your cultural values. Okay, moving on to our second pillar, context over control and communicating the challenge. So when you strip away those traditional approvals and rules, what actually takes their place? Well, the answer is clear: continuous communication about the context of the work. McCord uses a brilliant practical metric to measure this called the break room test. Here's how it works. Stop an employee, completely at random, in the break room or maybe the elevator, and ask them for the top 5 company priorities for the next 6 months. If they can tell you rapid fire, and ideally using the exact words you've used in your communications, right in order, then you've succeeded. If they can't, well, the heartbeat of your company's mission isn't truly resonating yet, and you need to communicate more context. And that crucial need for clear communication takes us right into our third pillar, the power of radical honesty and telling the truth. This one challenges our deeply ingrained desire to just be nice to each other at work. We so often hide the truth because we think people aren't smart enough or mature enough, or just because, well, it doesn't feel good. But the reality is, humans hate being lied to. We hate being spun. It really isn't cruel to tell people the truth respectfully. In fact, transparency is the absolute only way to ensure trust, correct problems in real time, and prevent much, much worse outcomes down the line. And leaders absolutely have to model this honesty themselves. A perfect example from the book is Tom, a former Netflixer who became the chief product officer at Coursera. He modeled radical honesty perfectly by openly and even delightedly admitting when a shiny new idea of his was completely failing. Let's look at exactly how that played out. Tom came in with this bright, shiny Netflix background and just assumed Coursera classes should be streamed 24/7 with total open access. But the professors, they argued reality. They knew students actually need hard starts and deadlines to finish their courses. When Tom implemented his streaming idea anyway, the data rolled in, and sure enough, many students started, but very few actually finished. By honestly evaluating that data and flat out admitting he was wrong, Tom and the professors were able to synthesize a winning blended model. Courses start every 2 weeks with strict deadlines, but if you fall behind, you just roll into the next 2-week cohort. That right there is the tangible, real-world business value of admitting when you're wrong. Which leads us directly to the fourth pillar, fact-based vigorous debate, arguing on the facts. To get to the best ideas, you absolutely need open debate, but it has to be productive. Back when Netflix faced a massive, beastly technical struggle to decrease streaming delays, tensions were, as you can imagine, incredibly high.
People were yelling things like, "You have to fix the god-having buffering problem." Now, that exact kind of emotional venting is what management explicitly told the sales and marketing teams was totally unacceptable to say to the engineers. Instead, they were taught to step back and reframe their frustration into genuine fact-seeking questions. Things like, "Help me understand why buffering takes so long." Asking this with a true spirit of curiosity built remarkable bridges of understanding. It exposed the real difficulty of the engineering challenge to the non-technical staff, turning what was an emotional fight into a collaborative, fact-based, almost scientific process.
And you know what's fascinating? How modern talent actually reacts to this. As former Netflixer Steve McClendon discovered with his own startup, younger millennial workers absolutely thrive on this top-to-bottom transparency. Rather than being intimidated by vigorous debate, they're actually drawn to it like moths to a flame. They love the freedom to question everything and truly understand the whole business. It's a massive competitive advantage when you're hiring. And that brings us perfectly to our fifth and final pillar, building the future team with relentless focus. Here we have to look at how this culture of honesty and debate dictates the way you hire, and sometimes how you fire. McCord actually flips Donald Rumsfeld's famous military quote right on its head. Rumsfeld said you go to war with the army you have, not the one you wish to have. But McCord argues the exact opposite for business. You've got to proactively hire now the team required for your future scale. You literally cannot just go to war with the team you have if they aren't equipped for what's coming down the pipeline in 6 months or a year. And because you're always building for the future, you have to master the art of what she calls the good goodbye. The book illustrates this perfectly with the story of a really brilliant Netflix director of engineering. Now, his actual job was to improve Netflix's search capabilities, a massive priority for the company. But he became completely obsessed with integrating Netflix into Facebook. He was pitching it endlessly, even though management was constantly trying to redirect him back to search. Because Netflix desperately needed someone passionate about their actual future-focused priorities, management practiced that radical honesty we talked about. McCord sat him down and essentially said, "Look, we all know you love Facebook. You should really go work there. But we need the guy running search for us to actually be into search." They successfully transitioned him out to a startup he loved, and a newly motivated leader stepped in to run search. It was a good goodbye because they dealt with reality directly and honestly. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty crucial question to think about. Look at your own workplace and ask yourself, are you truly treating your employees like adults who can handle the truth, or are you still relying on 20th century rules? The 21st century business landscape demands ultimate agility, and that journey starts with letting go of control and trusting your team. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Powerful, and I hope you found these insights as transformative as I did.